Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us all right. So my name is Sean Peterson. I'm a PhD candidate at UC Berkeley.
And I'm Lynn Schofield, biologist with the Institute for Bird Populations. And yeah, welcome to our live Falcon Q&A presented from our bedroom in quarantine. How's everyone doing?
And just as a heads up, our toddler is in the other room and hopefully will be enjoying himself for a moment so we can answer some questions. But one of us may pop in and out. Yeah, let's start with some of the first questions we had pop up. Let's see.
All right. How long do the parents go without eating? I'm seeing that. That's from Jennifer Dungan. And the answer is they can go several days if they needed to in a survival situation, but they're not. Grinnell is actively hunting for both of them and have been for the entire incubation period. And they've been eating 1 or 2 times daily as far as we've been able to tell. They often eat off camera up on top of the Campanile and other places.
All right. Then we got another food question from Vin. When will the chicks feed for the first time? That is probably, they could do it late this evening, but it most likely is tomorrow morning. We'll kind of see. It depends on kind of how Annie feels that the hatching process is going. Our stream might be buffering. All right, there you go.
All right, I saw a question of how did we know today was going to be hatch day? And luckily, peregrine falcons are relatively consistent between the time they start incubation and the time that the chicks become fully developed. And because we've been watching Annie and Grinnell for a couple years now, we have a good idea of how long it's taken them in the past for the chicks to develop.
All right. Next question, we've got one from Leslie about the egg, the broken egg. So we've had 2 chicks hatch, and you can see them under Annie right now, all nice and white and fluffy. The 3rd egg appears to be doing fine and is apparently viable, but still in the process of hatching. And the 4th egg is apparently inviable. It broke a couple days ago. We don't know how much it has developed or what its state is. So unfortunately, that egg is not going to make it.
All right.
Let's see, we got...
when will Grinnell come back?
Yep.
And the answer to that is we have seen Grinnell come by at least once since the chicks started hatching. And I saw a few people online commenting about Grinnell's sort of awkward arrival. And Grinnell regularly takes turns to incubate for Annie while she goes off to eat and preen and relax. But right now during the hatching process, Annie is not going to be letting Grinnell back on to the chicks for a little while longer, maybe another day.
Yeah.
Maybe less.
But he's around. You can actually see him quite often on Cam 3, which is the camera that's on the balcony immediately next to the nest. He'll often be there. All right, so this is a question from Maven about when the chicks will learn to fly. So it, I think, is 35 days. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, so baby birds develop very fast. Within 5 days, they're going to be twice their size and already start to be growing their next set of feathers. And by 35 days, they will have their full set of flight feathers and will be able to start learning to fly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, between 35 days and 42 days is the span of time you have. Males will usually grow in their full set of flight feathers sooner because they're smaller, and females tend to be a little longer in getting ready to fledge.
All right, we got a comment from Suzanne. Got my Cal Peregrine t-shirt on. If you would like one of your own, you can buy them on the website. All the proceeds go to supporting streaming services and education. So great way to kind of support the project.
Yeah, unfortunately, several of our public educational events have been postponed, but hopefully we'll do our best right now while everyone can watch stuff remotely, and we will try to bring some more Falcon events to people when we can again.
All right. So this is an interesting question. Do falcons have taste buds? Yes, they do. There's actually been some really cool research about birds' sense of taste, where birds can actually tell a lot about how nutritious their food is by how it tastes. There's a researcher who made a bunch of fake berries and fed them to robins and found that the ones with the highest caloric value were the ones that the robins preferentially ate. So they have a very good sense of taste.
Today I learned. But the month-old eggs, I guess, those are high in calcium. That's often why they'll eat the eggshell fragment. So I guess that high calcium tastes good for a falcon.
All right, and Tom has a question on how long they get until they get their feathers instead of fuzz. So basically, at about day 10, the down is complete, and then the outer flight feathers on their wings will start breaking the skin. So that's when we start to see those feathers start to show up.
And those are often called pin feathers because they're still in a sheath as they start growing, and so they will look like little awkward barbs coming out while they're initially growing.
And then by about day 40, they will pretty much be entirely feathered and good to go.
Yeah, which you will notice that there is still some fluff while they're fledging.
Yes.
So it's those primary flight feathers have actually grown in before all of the fluff has been lost a lot of the time.
All right, so we got a question from Sarah Michelle. Do these parent falcons live on this perch forever? So a lot of peregrine falcons migrate in most of the rest of the world, but in the Bay Area, we've got such a great environment around here for falcons that they do stay here year round. And so Annie and Grinnell are really going to stay on their territory pretty much their entire lives now that they've established it.
Of course, their territory does consist of much of Berkeley. They share Berkeley with maybe one other falcon pair that people have seen, but so outside of nesting season, you can actually find them all over town on top of buildings downtown and stuff like that. And then as far as how long during their life, they are going to intend to probably keep this territory as long as they're able to. And there's a possibility that a stronger or fitter falcon might come and take over the territory, forcing Annie or Grinnell to leave, but we don't expect that to happen for some time. Because Annie and Grinnell are still young and still doing a great job of defending their nest, as we have seen this year when a young interloper has visited.
Yeah. All right. We got a question from Preston. Why do they enfluffen? That's a very good question. So when birds are incubating eggs, they actually lose all of their under feathers on their bellies so that they can actually be incubating the egg on direct skin, and the skin gets really engorged with blood vessels, so it transmits a lot of heat to the egg directly. So they're enfluffling because they're kind of spreading their feathers on their belly a little bit and then trying to get as much skin contact on the eggs as possible.
Good use of the technical term of enfluffle. Thank you.
All right. So we got one here. Karen Runyon, do falcons prefer rodents or other birds of prey?
As prey.
As prey. Other birds as prey.
Although we have seen them eat other birds of prey. But peregrine falcons are specialized for hunting birds. Their hunting style is terror from above kind of thing, where they will fly up very, very high and spot the prey item that they want to eat, and will dive on it at the, record-breaking 200 and something miles per hour. And that kind of hunting strategy does not work when you're trying to catch something on the ground. So they much rather try to eat birds when they can. And most peregrine falcons will never catch rodents or prey items on the ground.
All right. When will we ban the chicks? So we're hoping to ban the chicks in the first or second week of May this year, depending on logistics.
Yeah, and so when we want to ban the chicks, that first or second week of May is based on when the chicks will have their legs fully developed and full size, so the ban fits them right, but before they have their full set of flight feathers, so we're not at risk of causing them to try to leave the balcony.
And so birds, when they're in the nest, they actually go from chick to fully adult size in the nest. Like, they don't get any bigger once they leave the nest. And one of the first things to get full size are its legs. So that's one of the first things that we can, why we can ban so early. And
why we can tell what sex they are so early, because they're still full-size legs, and so those are very different. So we have that narrow window of when we need to ban the chicks, and so we're hoping to do that in that first or second week of May, but we aren't sure if we'll be able to do that this year just because access to campus is more restricted.
Got our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, we got Remy, age 6, wants to know how long peregrine falcons live. Great question, Remy. In the wild, they get to live, I think, around 15 years maximum usually.
Yeah, breeding pairs have been known to be at the same site for 10 or more years. In captive situations, like education birds have been known to live somewhat longer. And but that's just because in a captive situation, they have food and shelter all the time, guaranteed. And so as they get older and they have a harder time potentially hunting, they'd still be being taken care of in captivity and not necessarily in the wild.
All right, got a lot of questions about nibbling on the pebbles. So there's a couple of reasons for that. The main reason is that birds don't have teeth, so if they have tough prey or tough food that they need to break up a little bit, they need to use little pieces of gravel inside their crop, which is a really muscular organ that kind of crushes the food plus the gravel together to break it up. So that's kind of their teeth effectively. And so she's kind of poking through the gravel looking for good grit. She also might just get a little bored sitting on the eggs and might be kind of playing with stuff. It's not known for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Kabir, 6-year-old. Who's the biggest falcon in Berkeley? So female falcons are much bigger than the males. So currently we think Annie is probably the biggest one, although the interloper that showed up a couple of weeks ago was a pretty big female.
Yeah, the intruder was a very large female, so maybe she's the biggest falcon in Berkeley.
Yeah, she might be.
Although I don't know if she's still in Berkeley right now.
Yeah, Annie might have chased her away. Yeah, good question here. Do parents recognize the gender of their chicks? If so, at what age? I'm not sure.
They do, in that the females do get a lot larger than the males. And nests where there's a lot of female chicks, eventually the male will start avoiding that nest, because that would mean all the nestlings are bigger than him, and you'll actually start to see, rather than coming into the nest like Grinnell often does to deliver prey, if it was a nest full of female chicks, he might just start dropping the prey near the nest and not going close.
All right. We've had some requests for the hatching status. So we have 2 eggs that have hatched for sure, third egg, we're pretty sure has not hatched, although it's hard to tell. She's sitting very tight on the eggs and chicks right now. And then the fourth egg is not viable, so that one is not going to make it. Oh, that's an interesting question. Can they get the flu or cold? Yes, there are lots of bird diseases, some of which can be transmitted to people. Bird flu was one of them a few years ago.
Which the falcons themselves wouldn't have, but, you know, generally speaking, yeah, birds can get sick, and they can get viruses, they can get bacterial infections. They tend to have species like falcons. Actually, this is a very recent fact I learned, that they're actually somewhat more resistant to diseases from other birds because they have a high pH in their mouth, and the reason they probably have evolved this characteristic is because they eat other birds regularly.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So in city environments, a lot of species of raptors are prone to getting sick because in city environments, there's more pigeons, there's more movement. But yeah, I guess falcons are somewhat resistant to that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's a fun fact that biologist Ben Dudak taught me a little while ago.
All right. How do the parents react when you ban the chicks? Well, Annie gets really, really pissed off.
So they will aggressively swoop around on the ledge, and so we have to work very fast when we do it. Luckily, the ledge protects us, and so that keeps us safe. And then as far as Annie and Grinnell are concerned, they're swooping and they're loud calling. They're doing that to try to scare us away. And as far as they're concerned, we were there for 5 minutes, and they scared us away, and they are fantastic parents, is pretty much their reaction to it.
All right. Yes, these are basically dinosaurs. Birds have all evolved from theropod dinosaurs, so they are direct ancestors or descendants of dinosaurs in an unbroken line. So if you actually look at some of the scientific literature, people call them avian and non-avian dinosaurs. So birds and non-bird dinosaurs. All right. We got a question here. What kind of nest do they like? So in the wild, peregrines nest on cliff faces. So they just look for kind of a nice flat spot on the cliff where they can fit the eggs, and they'll kind of scrape a little depression in there so that the eggs don't roll off. But they really like bare and rocky surfaces, which is why we have kind of a gravel tray for them to nest on.
Yeah, because when selecting a nest site, peregrine falcons, their focus is somewhere that is difficult to access as possible, so no predators can get to them, because they can get up to any ledge and their predators wouldn't be able to. So they pick the safest spot over the comfiest spots. And I will be back. I have someone to go.
Second half of the question is why are the chicks so fluffy? Birds, like mammals, are warm-blooded animals. So that means that they need to keep their body temperature at a certain level. And so they do that by, one of the things that they do is that they have really great insulation in the form of down feathers, those white fluffy feathers. So the chicks are getting really fluffy because they want to be able to keep all their heat in, and so that they're nice and warm while they're growing. Otherwise, it can be a little dangerous for them to be on the rocky nest.
And the sooner the babies are able to keep themselves warm, the sooner Annie's able to leave the nest for longer periods of time and look for food for them.
All right. At what age do peregrine falcons start laying eggs?
Well, they are able to do it. They're as 1-year-olds, although this is very rare. 1-year-old birds are still usually dispersing and are even still in their original juvenile plumage that they grew in when they were young. It is more common for It is more common for peregrine falcons to start nesting at 2 years of age, and that's what our grand falcon did. Annie and Grinnell had a chick 2 years ago who started nesting on Alcatraz Island, and she moved to Alcatraz her first year of life, and now she is 2 years old and has a nest and is having babies now. All right. Let's see. Here's a question. Do they hatch in the order they are laid? And not exactly, no, because peregrine falcons will lay all of their eggs before they start incubating full time. And so because they're not keeping the first several eggs quite warm enough to start development before they lay the rest of them, they actually all start development at the same time when they start incubating full time. So the eggs are not necessarily being hatched in the order they were laid, although often the last egg laid will be the last to hatch, just because
they'll often start incubating on when the third egg is laid, and so the fourth egg might be a little bit delayed.
And that's what we're seeing now.
All right. There's a question about falcon food. Since campus is closed, no people equals no crumbs. How's the pigeon supply? Well, the pigeon supply is relatively plentiful still.
We do live in Berkeley, not too far from downtown, so we're still seeing plenty of pigeons.
And lots of baby pigeons, which are easy to catch.
But also this season, we've seen them eating more native birds like robins and mourning doves. So even if the pigeon supply is not at its peak, there's lots of other options. They'll eat ducks, they'll eat woodpeckers, they'll eat coots, they'll pretty much eat any bird they find flying.
All right. Alexander asks, what will the chick's first flight after jumping off the Campanile be like? And if we asked Mary Malik, who runs the Fledge Watch program for these guys, she would say stressful, because it's kind of...
That's the most dangerous part of the peregrine falcon's life, probably, because although...
They work on like practice flapping and trying to build those muscles, but it's not the same as actually powered flight. So their first flights are very awkward. They kind of try to float down towards a new perch. Luckily, last year we had both birds landed on other buildings on campus, and so we're nice and safe after jumping off the Campanile.
Yeah, well, because what commonly happens, the fear isn't that they're going to just fall down and hurt themselves, but the fear is that they don't have very good control of their flight. So there is the potential for them to hit a building, and they also, if they hit the ground and land all the way on the ground, they often have a hard time getting up from the ground, rather than starting from a tree is a lot easier for them, starting from a tree or building. Hey, Sunshine, you want to help answer questions?
We might have a special guest coming. All right. So are falcons threatened? How's the species doing in California and elsewhere? So peregrine falcons are a pretty much global species. They're found on every continent except for Antarctica. But they were really threatened about 30 years ago, especially, or pretty much everywhere, by DDT usage. I think the statistic is that in 1970 something, there were only 2 pairs of nesting peregrines west of the Mississippi. So they were pretty much gone. The species has recovered incredibly well, thanks in large part due to the Endangered Species Act. So they've done an incredible job recovering. So it's really kind of a testament to the power of the Endangered Species Act and how much it has help this species come back from the brink. All right. When will the chicks get their eyesight? So that is a great question. Let's see. It's 5 days is what they say, is when they start to open their eyes. They start opening their eyes at 5 days. All right. Success rate after the Peregrine's fledge. So I think the statistic is that for raptors, I think it's about 40% of the birds that fledge make it their first year. It's a pretty high mortality rate. They actually, they need to learn to hunt and successfully hunt, and then often migrate successfully. It's a pretty dangerous first year of life. So, that's kind of what on average we see is about 40% survival for the first year. All right, got a question here. Are there any other raptors nesting on campus that you know of? Sorry, there's a fire truck going by. Yes, there are other nesting raptors on campus. There's at least 2 red-shouldered hawk nests. One is in the eucalyptus grove on the western side of campus, and I think there's another one on the eastern side of campus, but I don't know where that nest is exactly. There used to be a Cooper's hawk that nested on campus, but I'm not sure if there's still one active. Oh, there's also a great horned owl nest for sure on kind of the north side of campus on Strawberry Creek. What exactly do the chicks eat? So the chicks are going to be fed small pieces of bird meat very carefully by the parents for the first few weeks, and then they'll start to be kind of handed bigger chunks of bird that often contain more like bone or other undigestible materials when they're able to handle that kind of thing. And eventually they'll just be given full birds that they themselves have to learn to eat. I got a question here. Do you have other cams for the other birds nesting on campus? We unfortunately do not. The only one that nest I know for sure about its location, the red-shouldered hawk nest, is I think it would be very difficult to get a camera on it because it's way up in the top of the eucalyptus tree, so it would be very, very difficult.
Yeah, the advantage of Annie and Grinnell's nest for a webcam is that it is on top of a building on campus, so we're actually able to set up infrastructure.
All right. Falcon predators. One of the major ones in the wild is great horned owls, actually. And they often go after nests if they find them. But that's one of the benefits of the Campanile.
Yeah, so it's actually great horned owls are interestingly a large part of the reason that peregrine falcons have been living in cities so much is because peregrine falcons were reintroduced from captive breeding programs after their, sorry, I'm distracted. Anyways, after they had an endangered status, people were trying to breed and reintroduce peregrine falcons. And the first efforts failed horribly because they were introducing these young falcons into the wild, and great horned owls targeted them because falcons are a potential predator, and then these young falcons were not experienced in the real world. But then it turned out that falcons released near cities were able to find places to nest on buildings, and were very successful there because there were a lot less encounters with great horned owls. Otherwise, crows will sometimes attempt to eat eggs or attack young falcons. Other falcons don't necessarily predate on young falcons, but will harass and are a pretty big threat.
All right. A quick question here that we're happy to answer. Webcam, as far as our plans are, we'll be broadcasting as long as there are Falcons there. We just had a very, very generous, some very generous support from the administration, installing a permanent network cable up to the top of the tower. So Annie and Grinnell and any other Falcons that might show up in the future will be streamed from the Cal Falcons website, hopefully for as long as they're there.
Yeah, and we actually are streaming year-round. There's a lot less to see during the winter, but even then, you can check to see if Annie and Grinnell are home, which occasionally they are. And yeah, early spring, even before the nest starts, you'll start to see them quite a bit.
We got a question from Ella, age 9. So this is about the peregrine falcon invading the other peregrine, or Annie and Grinnell's nests.
And the reason for that is that the kind of very tall building with a lot of open area around it and lots of pigeons that the Campanile is a perfect nest site, and there aren't that many perfect nest sites out in the world. So young falcons looking for their first territory will really gravitate towards a place like the Campanile, just because it's a very good potential home, and there's actually not that many places that are suitable for a peregrine falcon, except for some of these tall buildings.
All right. Question here about who built the nest box. The nest box was built by Mary Malik and
Doug Bell.
Is it Doug? And so the initial nest for Annie and Grinnell was a bag of sand that had broken open on top of the Campanile. And when we went up there, we noticed that 2 eggs had been kicked off of the sandbag. And so the nest was not a great one because it wasn't big enough to really support the eggs. So we brought in a tray of gravel that we put down, and they luckily accepted it that first year. And then the second year, we upgraded it to this wooden box, which they have been nesting in for now 3 more years.
Yeah, and after that first year, once they successfully raise chicks in a location, they're very unlikely to leave it unless they're forced to. So the upgraded box was not going to bother them.
All right, so the chicks do not start breathing until right before they hatch. So they're actually getting all of their oxygen from the yolk. So the structure of the egg is that they have the yolk inside the egg, same as a chicken egg, and that has all of the nutrients that the bird needs while it grows up. So until just as short as 48 hours before they hatch out of the egg, they will not be breathing oxygen air at all. So yeah, that's how they get their oxygen. All right, from Wendy, do we know where the 2 babies from last year ended up? Not yet. So the Santa Cruz Predatory Bird Research Group that bans our falcons, they have, out of all of the falcons that they banned in the Bay Area, have 18% band recovery rate, which is very, very, very high, surprisingly high. But that's kind of about the rate that we have for Annie and Grinnell right now. We've had 6 chicks fledge, and we know where 1 is. So that's close to 18%. So odds are we probably won't know where Carson and Kate ended up, but hopefully we do.
Yeah, and we might in a few years. Grinnell, for example, he was banded by the Santa Cruz Predatory Research Group, Predatory Bird Research Group, and in 2013, and he actually wasn't sighted again until he moved into the Campanile several years later. So we still might hear from Carson or Cade several years from now when they finally find the perfect territory.
All right. Do falcons mate for life?
All right, you're not helping this at all.
So the answer to that is kind of. A territory will, if it has the same birds, they'll nest there together for as long as they're around. Often what will happen with peregrine falcons is later in life, a new male or a new female will show up and drive off the older male or female from the territory, and then the older male or female will mate with the new bird. And so they kind of stagger the territory. So we might have, like, for example, Grinnell might disappear one year and we'll have a new male with Annie, and then Annie might disappear a few years later and we'd have the new male and a new female. Let's see. So this is a really interesting question from Peter. Is falconry at home in the Bay Area a net positive for species recovery or not? And I can tell you that without falconry and falconers, the peregrine falcon would almost assuredly be extinct right now. They were totally integral into bringing the species back from the brink. They bred hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of falcons that to reintroduce into the wild. So falconry was very important for this species. Here's a great question. It looked like the baby pooped and my daughter would like to know if the mother was actually eating it. If so, why? Yes, she was eating it. This is a behavior called coprophagy. And this is actually performed by a lot of birds. And basically, baby birds, they don't have a great digestive system. So their poop is actually very nutritious. So everything in nature is about kind of maximizing your efficiency. So they're trying to keep as many nutrients going as possible. So that's one of the best ways to get rid of poop is to just eat it. Yeah, so an interesting fact about bird poop, baby bird poop, is why you often see poop on cars is that what's hypothesized is that songbirds are looking to dispose of their baby's poop in water so that it won't end up near their nests. And when they see a car with a really reflective hood, they're like, oh, that looks like water, I'll drop it there. So they grab their baby's poop and drop it on a car. How often do humans visit the top of the building by the nest? Very rarely. The facility service on campus has been incredibly helpful in kind of keeping this area free for Annie and Grinnell's use. We go up there a couple of times each year to help clean up the area. Annie and Grinnell get a little messy up there. There's a lot of prey remains and stuff left over, and so we help clean up the area to make sure that the gutters and everything don't get clogged up. But aside from that, the most of the tower is off limits to people. Is technology close to offering banding options with easier identification in the field? I would say a little bit yes, a little bit no for that. The best option we have right now are color bands for field identification. So those are a plastic band that goes on the bird's leg and has really big letters on the band, so you can see it with binoculars. And that's kind of the best we got now. There's other options that are a little bit more high tech, which are like transmitters, and those are very useful, but you need special equipment to figure out what bird it is. Cracker.
All right, let's see. building on the question about progeny location post-fledge, has there been discussion about chip technology? So wildlife biologists, for some species, wildlife biologists for some species of animals, but most commonly mammals, will use RFID chips to re-identify individuals that have been tagged or want to be tracked for a study. But with the birds, it is ultimately easier to re-spot or reread a band than it is to read an RFID chip. Other kinds of tags, as Sean said, can be used, but again, you'd need the equipment needed to track those, and so that's a whole nother matter. Let's see. What's since falcons fly at such high speeds, do the prey they catch get stunned from such an impact? And the answer is yes, pretty much. When a peregrine falcon hunts, they're not necessarily hunting by grabbing them in their claws so much as that knocking them out first with that impact and then catching the prey with their claws after they've been knocked out.
We got one of our most common questions we get. Does the carillon bother the falcons?
And so the answer is apparently not. They're the ones who chose to nest up there originally, and we actually have on our YouTube channel highlights one of the carillon concert playing while Annie is taking a nap and seems very relaxed. So it obviously doesn't bother them. The benefits of having the Campanile as their nest site far outweigh the annoyances of the bells and the lights that are on the Campanile. Let's see, we have a falcon evolution question. You're more, oh, not that one, since, okay. How long, there we go. Do you know the answer to this one? That's more of in your expertise.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 million years-ish ago.
So the kind of long answer is that falcon taxonomy, which is the study of the relationship between animals, has been a little confused for a long time, and I think scientists have only just now figured out how things are set up, because it turns out falcons aren't, their closest relatives are not things like hawks, like red-tailed hawks or owls or vultures. Their closest relatives, as you said, are parrots. And so, yeah, it's only about 5 to 8 million years ago that they diverged from parrots, which is actually on the kind of geological evolutionary.
5 to 8 million years for peregrines to devolve from other falcons.
Okay. Still, in a geological time span, that's not terribly long.
No.
All right. And so, are there other nests in the Bay Area with live cams? And there are 2 others that we know about that we sort of communicate with, and are also work with the Santa Cruz Predatory Birds Research Group. But the San Jose City Hall has a nest cam, and Pacific Gas and Electric, the PG&E building downtown, has a peregrine falcon nest cam. And this year, we're not sure about the status of the PG&E eggs. They have not hatched yet, and we're a little concerned about them. And then I don't know about San Jose City Hall, do you?
No, I don't know about them. The San Jose City Hall, I think, has had they laid 4 eggs and are incubating, and they might have swapped males after the 4th egg was laid. So, not sure. So, Annie does all the nighttime incubation that we've seen. And then during the day, during normal incubation, Annie and Grinnell were probably about 60-40 Annie. Grinnell actually did a pretty good amount of incubation.
Yeah, so Grinnell does spend a lot of time incubating, and he's a very devoted father, but also keep in mind that Grinnell is the one doing all of the hunting too, pretty exclusively. So Annie does spend a little more time incubating than Grinnell does. Let's see. So how will these babies differ from any being born, for example, in Point Reyes on the beaches? Could they adapt well to more wild environment later in life? And the answer is yes. In that first year of life, or first several years of life, sometimes as they disperse, they will look for a suitable habitat, and they might find that in all sorts of different kinds of places, anywhere with an appropriate ledge. And sorry about the distraction. It's hard in quarantine. But anyways, but during that first year of life, for any young falcon, they're spending a lot of time learning to hunt and learning to catch food. And so most commonly, they'll learn to hunt things similar to what they ate as young birds. It's what they're most used to. It's kind of the prey items they have in mind, but they can learn to hunt other things. And so yeah, we don't know where the young will end up or where they'll be, but they could easily end up living somewhere more wild. Let's see. Here's the classic question. Roman, age 5. How fast can they fly? And in a dive, they are able to fly faster than 250 miles an hour is the fact I've read, but that's super difficult to measure, of course, because you need the equipment to actually track that bird going 250 or more miles an hour. So it's somewhere faster than that, and we're not exactly sure how fast, but that is by far and away much faster than any other animal on Earth. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, so there's a new 500-foot tower planned for a few blocks from PG&E. Could another pair nest there once it's built? Is that too close? And so it might be too close. Peregrine falcons are very territorial, but on the other hand, in a place like San Francisco with so many tall buildings and so many pigeons, there are a lot of opportunities for nesting falcons. And I do, for example, anecdotally, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at their town hall, for at least some period of time, they had 2 pairs of peregrine falcons nesting on that single building, but on opposite ends of the big building. So as long as there's some amount of space between them so they don't interact, you could have them relatively close. So it's hard to say. Different pairs will be more or less aggressive. But yeah, so that kind of is with this. How far apart do they need to be? It depends on resources, and it depends on how much they can go about their day-to-day lives without having to encounter the other. And then in this line of discussion, let's see. Should we build falcon breeding towers? And so for a lot of species like the osprey, people do build nest platforms for them to nest on, and that works great. Peregrine falcons, however, a breeding tower would pretty much have to be an entire building. And so what makes more sense is for when peregrine falcons find a ledge on a building, for people to just allow them to nest and not interfere with them when they do. Let's see, and then just somebody wants the update. Do we know if there are 3 chicks yet or just 2 so far? So we do not know for sure if there's a 3rd chick, but I also haven't seen Annie get up in a little while. So I think that will be up to you guys to tell us if you notice a 3rd chick next time Annie gets up.
All right. Let's see.
All right. Do we know how peregrines meet their mates? And kind of as we discussed earlier, peregrines are more attached to their territory than they are to their mate. And so mostly it's 2 peregrines both fall in love with the same wonderful nest site and then fall in love with each other. And of course, they're going to, if a female encounters a male that she doesn't think would be suitable, she will probably chase them off of the territory. So they are, to an extent, choosing which mate they have, but their first love is the nest site.
Did you do this one?
Let's see. Are there any falcons in the region wearing radio transmitters that allow us to see their feeding arrangement and off-season movement? And now I am aware of several peregrine falcon research projects that have GPS transmitters on the falcons. The Peregrine Fund is one of the groups that has done such projects in the past, but I'm not sure if there are any Bay Area groups that are tracking falcons. But I will file this away and maybe we'll make a post on social media that we can link to some of the projects that have tracked the birds before. We do know because of GPS data from some of these projects that there are individuals that have been flying from northern Canada all the way to South America within a matter of a day. They make these massive flights, and we also know that they don't necessarily go the same places and the same routes all the time. So yeah, I think that one's to file away and to link some of these studies because I'm not necessarily the expert on specifics on this. The Golden Gate Raptor Observatory doesn't do GPS tracking of peregrines, but they do track other species of birds as well, and they operate right in the Marin headlands and have done a lot of research. And so looking up the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory might give you some information about migration of the other birds in the Bay Area.
A question from Preston. What can we do to protect peregrine falcons and other birds of prey? So right now there's a big push to restrict rat poison, which is one of the main killers of raptors in the environment.
Yeah, and so there's actually a group that our partner, Alan Fish and Jijiro, has been a big advocate of called Raptors Are the Solution, or RATS, which is trying to advocate for using things like owls to try to control pests in agricultural areas rather than using a lot of these pesticides. So they're doing things like building owl boxes and wineries to try to attract owls, to try to control rodents better. Another thing people can do, and a lot of places in the Bay Area have started doing, is to mandate that buildings, new buildings, especially tall buildings as they're being constructed, take some sort of action to prevent bird strikes against the window, be that just stickers or different kinds of glass that's more noticeable to the birds. Let's see. Let's see. All right, so last year there was the failed egg and it was just left there. They didn't end up eating the egg. And so the adults will eat the eggshell fragments eventually as the eggs hatch. But if the egg does not get broken, they will usually just leave it be. And so last year that egg just didn't hatch, and so it never opened, and so the parents never ate the shell.
Yeah, so we're not sure what's going to happen with the egg this year. It depends a little bit on how much it developed. If it's largely empty right now, it may break on its own of its own accord, and we'll be just kind of eaten, or he might be done with our chat. We'll see if we can get a couple more questions in before we got to finish up.
But the parents will not actively remove a largely complete egg from the nest. If it's not broken, they won't eat it, and they won't intentionally remove it. And so occasionally there will be unhatched eggs from a previous year, even in the nest for a long time, even after nesting is complete, if it doesn't break for some other reason.
All right. Oh, double click that. How far north do peregrine falcons breed? Do they run into gyrfalcons? They breed almost all the way about as far north as you can get. Ellesmere Island.
Yeah.
Way up in northern Canada, up in the high Arctic. So they do cross ranges with gyrfalcons. Luckily, gyrfalcons and peregrine falcons generally target different prey, so they aren't hugely competitive.
Yeah, peregrine falcons use the hunting style of the death from above, whereas gyrfalcons will be more likely to chase their prey at a lower altitude. So they are hunting differently, and so not competing a lot. Although I'm sure there are interactions that happen.
Yeah. Yes, we do all the photoshopping of the falcon photos.
Specifically, Sean does all the photoshopping of the falcon photos. He's the talented one at that.
But yeah, it's pretty fun. It's been fun to kind of play around with different things to do with the Photoshop. Let's see. Do we know how old Annie and Grinnell are? We know how old Grinnell is. He hatched in 2013, so he is turning 7 right now. Annie, we don't know. She's not banded, so we have no information on where she came from.
Yeah, so she was at least 2 years old when she arrived on the Campanile because she didn't have the juvenile feathers at the time. But other than that, we don't know. So
she's at least 6 now. I think we'll do one more question. Let's see. All right. So we actually could have so from the first egg hatching to the last egg hatching, it can be up to 72 hours. So we still have about 2 days in which the last unhatched egg could hatch. So if we don't have that third viable egg hatched today, don't worry too much. We'll still be keeping an eye out for it to start hatching.
But yeah, we'll wait and see. Yeah. I'm pretty optimistic that we'll have a third baby soon, but even 2 chicks is a very successful nest for a peregrine falcon.
Yeah. So yeah, we just want to thank you guys. It's so much fun to have you guys all kind of following along with us as Annie and Grinnell nest on top of the Campanile. We really couldn't be doing any of this without your support and your excitement.
Yeah, we've received a lot of public support that has made this possible, that has allowed us to have the streaming services going and the cameras. And so thanks to every one of you and all your participation. We're happy we can do something that brings the community together.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone. And keep your eyes on the cams for the next few days as the babies finish hatching and start eating and getting bigger. And we'll see you all later.
Thanks.